Welcome to episode 90 of the Nero Show. In today's episode,
Chris has headed to the world's biggest bike trade show and gives us a rundown of all the road bike tech that he's seen and what's interested in him.
Jesse's China build is real. He's put a few kilometres into it. What does he think?
And Trek update their Madone. We are not quite stoked with it. We explain why. All right, let's get into it.
All right, Jesse Coyle.
Chris Miller.
Got any news? Got any updates? What's going on?
Where are you at the moment? Other side of the world?
I am. I'm in Frankfurt, Germany, about 500 metres from the local train station here, the main train station, and in just a little bit too much than walking distance from the large trade fair that is Eurobike.
Yes. Getting amongst it.
There it
Guide.
is.
Okay.
Those of you listening, there's my guide.
Okay. Have you been walking around there as a punter, or did you get a media pass for this thing?
I did get a press pass,
a press insider
but it doesn't make a dramatic difference to your experience. You can kind of see people do check you up and down when they kind of see the pass, like who is this guy? What is this guy? Because really all you've got here at the moment is industry heads. It's a full trade show. These first 3 days are the brands themselves, and then the people walking around are the distributors and the suppliers. So there's no punters here. There's no actual real life customers. And then you've got the small wing of legacy media, who I did meet a few of, and then the YouTube bubble. We've got a little contingent of YouTube bubble here as well.
So because it's Friday now, so when does it open to the public to walk around, kick the tires?
Tomorrow.
Okay.
Yeah, so Saturday and Sunday are more your festival days. And so on those days, they'll have the pump track. There's actually a crit, which would have been sick. It's like a 2.5K crit track. This just gives you an idea of how big this trade fair is. There's a 2.5K crit track inside the whole complex where Eurobike is actually happening, which would be sick. That's potentially on the mark for a future year. So the actual test track that you do get to go and ride the bikes on is like it's actually a track, so it's not too bad. Yeah, and then so the public will come in over the weekend, and then I think there'll be like Red Bull sort of flip jumpy things and that kind of stuff.
Okay, interesting. Now, I want to get your opinion on sort of brands you've seen, products you've seen, do a bit of a walk around, but we're going to take some time. A lot of people might have seen on YouTube some of the walk around videos and some of the brands, but they're really only spending 2 or 3 minutes per product just showing it off. We want to go a bit deeper and just chat through what you're seeing, what it means for the industry, how things are stacking up and things like that. So we'll go into a bit of detail. I also sent you on a bit of a side quest for this Eurobike trip because I have been going down a bit of a tire width rabbit hole. So I got you to sniff around some of the brands, trying to figure out why the brands are kind of pushing the 28mm tire width as the race tire. When I from what I see, it could potentially be a little bit higher. So we will also probably get into that as well. But yeah, so what stood out to you? What brands? Let's get started.
So yeah, the way I want to do this, and I'll do this really quickly, is I just want to talk about the brands as I saw them, right? Because what you do is you arrive on the train station, you just get this massive guide, and that's all the brands that are here. There's no go Chris, go to classified over there because that's where the new tech is. You just have this massive place and you are pointing and shooting to find things that you want. So I essentially went through the guide and I'm like, right, who do I want to see first? And Dare was kind of at the top of the list for me because, you know, Abrahamson's riding pretty well on it at the tour, and it's a bike that I think the two of us are kind of pretty keen on the look of, and we like that style thing. So I did. So I went up to Dare and had a good sniff around that Aero bike. And it is, the pictures don't do it justice. It is easily, for me, the most extreme bike I've seen in real life that's not a prototype bike. It's quite out there. That head tube is absolutely enormous, and the bars are almost laughable how big they are. They're quite hilarious. But so I got a chance to sit down and talk to both the X sort of liaison officer. So he's the guy who talks to the brand and between the riders themselves and the brand and what they sort of want, and then the Dare people themselves. And I wasn't able to get, because I was pushing them on the Aero data, and I wasn't able to get our, Tour magazine numbers. But what they were telling me is that they're, in comparison to the previous Aero version, that it was 7% faster. And the other kind of tagline they were using, which was quite interesting, I thought, was 1 bike length faster in a sprint. So I'm not quite sure how that was measured, but it was a bit of a strange one. The bike itself, though, and I did want to kind of highlight this, was so they've gone, and this seems to be another thing, everyone's going to this new grade of carbon. So this is like the step up from the T1000. Everyone now is promoting this. I can't remember exactly what it is. I'll bring it up on the screen, but it's the new Torre carbon. So they've gone to that one. It is a redesigned frame, so it's not a frame that was, they looked at the old one, made a few tweaks. This was completely redesigned from the ground up. They made a big deal about that. So the price that I got from them was $5,500 US. Now, there's still sort of that's an RRP, and whether that's direct from their website or whether they're starting to work with local retailers is another question that I'm asking them, and that's really regional. So they are going to be working with local retailers in Australia and Europe. The US is a big outlier when it comes to a lot of these Chinese brands. They are all looking at going direct to consumer in the US. And there's a lot of reasons for that, like industry reasons around tariffs and all kinds of things, and the way that brands own shops and stuff in the US. So that number that they gave me is their direct to consumer number for US customers in the future. So I thought that was kind of interesting, the way they're trying to distribute.
Dare's not a Chinese brand, though.
No, it's a Taiwanese brand. Sorry, I should clarify that.
Okay. I could have sworn, maybe I've just been bamboozled because they're on a European team. I didn't realize they were essentially an Asian brand.
Yes.
Okay.
100%. They're Taiwanese brand.
Interesting. Yep. Okay.
Now, I don't know the history of them.
Yeah. Okay. That pricing is... Actually, before I get into the pricing, I do want to mention the pricing of that. $5,500 for a frame set. What's chat around this bike? Because you're seeing... we'll probably get into the Trek with their Madone, one bike to do it all, SL8. Saying that that's all you need. That's all the World Tour team needs. So did you ask him what's the point of even releasing an Aero bike that's going to be a 2025 model? Why?
So I think we've talked about this a bit in the past, that these second, third tier brands are the ones that maybe are filling the void of the specific bike unit. And that Dare's a really good example of that. So they have a climbing bike. They have a full-on aero bike. I think I'm allowed to say, because one of the riders is riding it at the Tour de France, and they're going to have a one bike to do it all bike. So there is, this is a brand that, is covering all the bases by the looks of it. Now, the reason I wanted to bring up the Uni X guy is, so he was almost doing all the talking for me. Now, there was a little bit of a language barrier with the Taiwanese guys, but he was just going on and on about this aero bike, in the sense that their riders do honestly believe that it is faster than one bike to do it all competitors.
Well, that's pretty much all I've seen them riding. Seems like all they're riding is that unreleased, unreleased bike.
So they have the option. They've had the option, I should say, in the last month. Can I say this? I probably can. I don't care. Of the one bike to do it all, or this, and they're all choosing this. Now, when they get to the big mountain stages, potentially that changes. But and the only other thing I wanted to say about this is, because I asked him that question of, like, does this actually matter? Like, we sit here and go, oh, the pros will be pissed that one bike's do it all. And he's like, it 100% matters. The riders know what the brand is. They know they get this choice of it, and it impacts their mindset, and it, to a lesser extent, impacts just what bike brand is chosen by every team, because that's just a money thing. Like,
I'm interested to see what the weight comes to on this thing in a full build, and also what the ride feel is, because the frame, and we saw as well. I'll send you the link to the article, Chris. You can put up some photos for the people watching on YouTube. We just saw Van Rysel have released a prototype Aero bike, which is just being ridden at the tour, and these things look like they came out 10 years ago. It's a full-on hark back to Gen 1 looking Aero frames. Like, this Van Rysel one looks chunky as, like, hideous. So the question, hideously functionally fast. So the question is, firstly, what are they able to get these weights down to now that they've been able to develop these frame shapes for 10 plus years? Can they get the weights at a reasonable level? And what's the ride quality like? Do these still ride like Gen 1 Aero frames, or have they able to get the ride and the weight to a level where an Uno X rider is happy to ride it for every single stage of the tour and not getting absolutely smashed by it? So if they can manage to do that, then you have an interesting case.
Weight-wise, I do know that Abrahamson's build was sort of close enough to 8 kilos from what I gather.
Okay.
Now, they're not running the lightest wheels. They're not going the full carbon spoke.
They're on the DT
saving,
Swiss wheels. They're pretty heavy.
Yeah, which are fast. Every brand that you talk to does clarify that the DT Swiss wheels do well in any testing.
Mm-hmm.
And that, I just quick on a quick side note, most brands all test their bikes against other bikes and other builds and don't necessarily talk about it. So they all know what everyone's doing, you know. Everyone knows what the Madone tests are internally. They don't tend to make a big deal out of it, but everyone tests everyone.
As they probably should. I mean, that makes sense.
Yep.
The thing that I'm a bit stuck on there is the pricing. So $5,500 US for a frame set. That's S-Works SL8 pricing. Even the Tarmac SL8, so the non-S-Works version's $3,500 US dollars. So for an Asian essentially brand frame, $5,500, you kind of balk at that number. But as more of the main top tier brands start to go one bike to do it all, this becomes a niche product, and they can start to, the price of that's just going to keep going up and up because there's less brands that are even bothering to do them. So, you know, if this was 4 years ago, I'd probably be laughing at that price. But now that a lot of the big brands don't even bother, well, they can, you know, they probably can just charge that. So yeah, I mean, but you know, to charge the same as an S-Works for Dare. Interesting.
I do hope I got that number right, because she was searching for it. She was like searching through her like WhatsApp messages to find the number, and then she just blurted out $5,500 US. Okay. So hopefully,
well, I mean,
hopefully
it doesn't make me. I didn't think that was a bizarre number for a what is becoming more of a niche product. Fair enough. Ridden by a Uno X World Tour. Ridden by a World Tour level. Team?
They are, and it was interesting. I know no one said this, but there was like this almost wink and nod, almost melancholy, like discussions between the Dare people and the Uno X people that got me feeling like they're not going to be on them for much longer. But we'll see. Maybe I'm wrong. Hopefully, I'm wrong. But again, that was very much a money thing, from what I gather. It's just as your budgets go up, can your bike brand pay enough?
Yeah. So yeah.
All right. So next up, JC, was the classified TRP collab.
Yes.
It's all about collabs, bro. And again, like, this is a funny one. Like, I'm walking around, I'm like, there's no like flashing sign over in the corner that says like new tech here, Chris, come over. You're just sort of walking around, and then like there's this collection of black shirted people, and there's more people in this one little corner area. And I'm like, oh, get over there, have a look at that. Get over there. I'm like, classified. Oh, interesting, classified. And I'm sort of standing there, and then I'm kind of looking closer at the classified stuff. I'm like, hang on, what the hell is that? and then it dawns. So it's again, that's kind of comes to this show thing. It's not that sort of obvious what you need to go. Well, maybe it is for some people, but anyway. So yeah, I reckon we called this, JC.
I was about to say, did we not say they need to have it in a group set or come stock on a bike or something along these lines? They've really, I mean, this is probably more than I would have predicted to come out collaboration with a brand new group set that hadn't already been released, and it's bang, this hits the market, new group set, and it's already integrated with classified. That's a killer relationship. Kudos.
Interesting. You think? Oh yeah, okay. I mean, well, we'll get into it, but just
don't
quickly,
you reckon that's very slick? It's not some bodgy thing.
Hang on. Oh, okay. Slick. Interesting word. We'll come back to that, Jesse.
Okay.
Okay. So just for those of you who haven't heard, this is so it's a new group set between with classified working with TRP, which is again, I'm pretty right in saying a Taiwanese-based group set manufacturer. And essentially, what this is doing is building the classified hub into their electronic group set. And what it does is, so there's no front derailleur, and it allows you to shift 16 gears at the rear. So similar to the way that your Shimano Synchro Shift would have worked, where you just continuously shift. What this does is you get to a point on the rear cassette, and it engages the classified hub to then create a seamless gear shift as you move through the gears, and giving you 16 either side. I did jump on the bike. I was hoping someone would film me do it, and it is pretty seamless.
Yeah.
I would argue that going up the block, it was quite good. It was almost unnoticeable going up the block. Coming down the block, you definitely felt a little gugunk as it
because
sort of
what it does is
itself.
as a classified hub changes its gearing, essentially, it also goes, the rear derailleur goes the reverse direction to balance that out, right? As you cross that part of the gearing. So I thought, as you're shifting to harder gears, there's one shift where that derailleur is going to suddenly go the opposite direction. And then I was kind of, I was curious as to how smooth that was.
The functionality of it was, they'd actually set the bike up. I thought this was quite tricky the way they did it, is that there was very little resistance on the trainer bike that you were set up on. So it was almost impossible to actually put some force into it.
It's on erg mode at about 25 watts.
100%. 100%. And I actually asked them, could they turn it up? Because you're spinning at like 300 cadence to try and get any power out through it. But yeah, so that's, and there is also what they call like a dump feature. So which will open up then the full 24 gears. And that is more like a front derailleur shift, essentially, which will open up more gears for you and is a separate button. And that is obviously quite a noticeable thing once you do hit that. So that was the functionality of it, the look of it. So that was Classified's own chain set, which I kind of thought was a bit interesting. They weren't using a TRP one. So the TRP are basically the rear derailleur and the brakes and the levers, and Classified doing everything else. So again, we called this. We were big on this has to be the next step for you. So you're hyped about this? You feel this is a good move?
I think so. I think it looks pretty good. You run one by, you've got more range of gears than you had on a 2x system. It does it for you. Quantum shift, they call it. I like that too. Quantum shift. So you got 16 gears. Again, like if the longevity of it's good and the friction is similar to a road bike, a regular cassette and 2x, I would probably ride this. And the weight, if it's not too heavy, that rear hub looks massive. Kind of going, how much does that thing weigh? But I think it looks really neat. And in a, like this road space where it's really hard to get anything that's innovative and is kind of different, this does look like progress.
Oh, they're going to love you saying that. All right. So I agree about the functionality long term. Be interested to see. The other kind of like practical functional question I have that was raised by a couple of people was just in terms of the actual frame, the bike frame designs. That a few people saying that frames aren't designed to take load in that area the way that the classified hub is putting through those rear stays. Not that frames can't do it, just that frames simply aren't designed for that. So they tend to be designed to take a little bit of extra reinforcement around that front derailleur area. They're not taken for large shifts and dump modes down in that rear derailleur through that rear axle. So that's potentially something to discuss down in the future. But can I just quickly say something about classified, Jesse?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
These guys are like the cool kids at school that it's almost like an honor to be talked to by them. There's a real, so Chris Vibe Doctor walking around this place, I just got a really weird vibe off the whole classified thing. So again, the guys, they're all in their black classified t-shirts and there's a massive cool club kind of feel and sensation to it that it's an honor for you, an honor for us to potentially be told something about this group set. If one of them looked at you even, you kind of went, oh, I'm in the cool I'm in the cool guys. And it's a weird vibe because it kind of felt like they were, they feel like they're a lot bigger than they are. And the reason I sort of bring this up is they're really not. They're still a very, very niche product. I mean, the size of like the stand and all that kind of thing is very much in line with random helmet manufacturer or third tier tire brand. So they're still sort of playing at that level, but you know, they've got the music. It's all a whole vibe, the classified thing, which makes me. I just kind of have this sense that they're not really in it for the long haul. They're kind of in it for the get the look and feel, just get enough functionality, enough product out to potentially be bought or something like that. I just that's kind of why I just would hang off this being like, hey, get in the classified ecosystem because these guys are in it for the long haul. I just reckon they're in it for a good time and to potentially get out. So that's my vibe. Doctor thoughts.
I mean, not that like if the system, if let's say SRAM look at the system and go, shit, this is low friction, the weight's pretty good, this is much cleaner, we could sell this easy. Like it wouldn't be the worst thing if they do get bought out. That's probably what's going to see it get on millions of bikes. So I'm full on the classified hype train. I think it's cool. Yeah.
Nice. We've flipped. I like it.
Yep.
Good.
Oh, this is we can get onto the Seka. Let's go to something just a little quicker. Just about the group sets. I watched Dave Arthur's video. He was walking around going to some of the brands, and I don't know if you were clocking this, so I'm kind of putting you on the spot here. It did look like at most of the bike brand stands, their marquee bike that they had on the front had SRAM Red on it, not Shimano. Is that just a coincidence of the brands that were featured on the videos that I was watching, or did you see that yourself?
No, I think it was split. I do think it was split. Yeah, just kind of running through what I saw in my brain. No, it wasn't. It wasn't obvious.
Okay.
No.
Okay.
No, it wasn't obvious. I didn't see one campy bike. I will say that.
Oh, okay. Yeah. We talked about Dare, for example. Dare Uno X are a team running Shimano, and their limited edition coloured frame set on the front of the stand had SRAM Red on it. The Seka Spear had SRAM Red on it. Yeah, okay. So it's still, maybe it was just the ones I was seeing.
I will say that Dare bike, they had a 50-tooth chainring on it. I mean, guys, if you're going to put a bike up there, come on, let's see a big boy on it. The chainring looked hilarious on that bike. Like, I think that it has to ship with a 54, compulsory. must ship with a 54. Yeah. So Seka bike. Can we talk about the Seka bike?
The Seka Spear, yep.
Seka Spear.
Ooh, this was getting a bit of mentions in some YouTube titles. And
which is interesting because this, so Seka were there, not really there by themselves. They'd kind of come last minute. The guy who was there was actually kind of attached to another, almost like distributor-y type guy. And I was actually following GP Lama at the time. I was going to go for a meeting, and I'm like, I recognize that bike. And I went over and I was like, oh, that's the Seka Spear. And eventually I got talking to the guy. So again, this is not just another thing of like saying, it's not like Seka were there with this big, massive, like, stand and saying, come here, we're this new brand. It was very much, it kind of still felt like if you know, like 99% of the people that were there would have walked straight past this corner stand bike and not paid any attention to it. So I know we make a big deal about this on YouTube, but like in that space, I can tell you it's still pretty invisible.
Mm-hmm. Okay. What did you think about it?
Yeah, that said, I think I messaged you about this when I actually saw it. Like this was a real highlight for me, actually. Not only just seeing that in person, because the frame itself, really detailed, super light. I think he's claiming sub 700 or sub 700 gram frame. But the actual shapes on it, and that I know they've got a name for it. What do they call the thing at the rear end?
It's the wind eye.
The wind
brown
eye. I mean, the brown eye. It doesn't look anything.
When you're riding in the rain, it's a bit of tire spray.
It looks way more intricate and interesting than the Trek. Like it's not even on the same planet. And I did ask him, like, is there any sort of comparison? And he is very, very firm in saying that this exists because of many models that they did, that they found that this design actually had some aerodynamic advantage and some compliant advantage. It's completely their own design. And they've got some kind of wind tunnel testing that seems to back some of those claims up. I just want to just quickly also mention, so we'd talked in the past that these guys had done some wind tunnel testing. They've since gone back into the wind tunnel, and with some of the redesigns that they've made, things like around the chainstays, which they'd slightly changed the tubing on, and the handlebars. They completely redesigned the handlebars, but they were absolutely sick, really deep, flat looking things, with fully customizable lengths and widths, which again is something that is kind of unique to some of these brands.
By fully customizable, I had a look through the stock. I think you mean like more options. They would go down to a 36.
Yes.
Width and length. Yeah, okay. You sent me the white paper too to have a look over. I mean, it's pretty. This white paper is very well put together. This looks very similar in quality to the Trek one. So yeah, they've got their aero testing numbers, frame weight, vertical compliance is increased compared to their old, the Seka Exceed, that one that looked like the Factor Ostro VAM. Stiffness to weight and stiffness is increased, blah, blah, blah. I will say a couple of things that stood out. I was having a brief pick through, especially comparing this to Trek's one, which we might get into too for that new Madone, is they've tested against their old Seka Exceed and a Tarmac SL8 in collaboration with Aero Coach in the UK. They have tested with a dummy with only legs that weren't moving, and then with a rider on it. So they've got basically static conditions of the legs, and then also more real world with the rider on it. And they've also tested at 40 kilometers an hour across a sweep of yaw angles, a pretty standard testing. So they've actually tested it at, I think, is a pretty reasonable speed. It seems like the industry standard to test now is 40 to 45 kilometers an hour. Then you've got weird things like Dare said, which is at a World Tour sprint, so they've probably 65 kilometers an hour, which is not particularly relevant. And then you've got what Trek did, which is tested at 200 watts. So, like, what good's aerodynamics at 200 watts? So on both of those extremes are just, they don't make sense. So this testing to me looks pretty reasonable. It was and they also compared with a giant TCR, the new model too. So
it was the 2024 TCR.
Yeah, so they also tested with the 2024 TCR. So 4 bikes in their test. You can go through and look at the results for yourself. They claim it's quite good aerodynamically, faster than their old bike, and aerodynamically seemingly pretty close to the SL8. So fair enough. And as well, the interesting other little package here that they've got, their little bundle of accessories also is quite impressive. So that comes with all your mounts and things like that, integrated bottle cages similar to like that come on the giant Propel that look quite nice. So a nice little neat package there. The pricing,
a lot of those, you go on, sorry.
The pricing, I don't know if you got thoughts on this, but the pricing is a sticking point for me, because I got the pricing in the current Australian pricing, which is available, and then just converted it to US dollars. So it should be fairly close. The regular model, they've got 2 models, the regular model and the RDC, which is lighter. So the regular model frame set, no handlebars, is $2,151. And then the lighter model's $2,693 US dollars. The handlebar, which you're going to have to buy separately, is $400 US dollars. So, a specialized tarmac SL8 frame set, not the SOX model, just the regular model, is $3,500 US dollars. So Seka, who don't appear to have any marketing budget at all, I can't really, they're not ridden, as far as I'm aware, I can't see any teams that they ride, that ride the frames. I've never really seen anyone on it, really. So when you're buying a bike, whether you care about the marketing or not, it is nice to see teams or other people having ridden the bike. So that doesn't exist. And then comparing this to other bikes in this kind of direct from Asia space, like the Tavelo Aero, for example, that includes the handlebars and is $1,880 USD, which was already, people were kind of like, well, that's a cut above the other, direct from Asia frame. So this is pretty expensive. They're doing everything right. Like you've looked at the frame in person, you think, oh, it looks really nice. They've sent it off for testing. People that are interested can go look in the data for themselves and see if it's something they would like. It's a frame I would probably happily ride, and I think it probably is quite good. But when you don't do any marketing, you can't charge, in my opinion, that kind of price without handlebars, because your brand doesn't have any cachet. It's just the Seka. So I would question that pricing. I don't really get.
But if you're trying to align your brand in that space for the long term, you almost this is my take, is you almost have to charge that to set basically the watermark for where you're going to be in the future. I mean, I would like to think that you set yourself right. This is where we are. We are this much cheaper than an SL8. We're this much cheaper than a Factor, but we are in line with this. We're not Tavelo. And when potentially the marketing comes down the track, you've already sort of laid your slate out for where you lay in the market. And I know that I asked that question because that number sort of took me back a little bit as well. And it's just like, well, we're here for the long term. We're not here to compete with Tavelo. We're here to compete with Cervelo. And that's, I suppose you just have to sort of, how many more metaphors can I use for?
Yeah. If you want to compete with Cervelo, people have to ride your bike. So,
well,
I'm
that's
with
what I do want to get on.
Yeah.
Can I get on to distribution? Because that's, I posted some story stuff about this bike, and I just got so many people just saying, where can I get this? Where can I get this? And so this is the biggest problem that these brands have, is distribution. specifically in America. It's just the tariffs that they get charged when they push in there directly are massive, and the shops don't tend to want them because they have deals to sell Trex Specializeds. So it's not a priority market for them because of the difficulty to get in there. And so something like Australia, they're not going to go direct to consumer. They're going to go through retailers. So I think even Case are going to pick them up. The same in UK and Ireland. They're going to be going into distributors. That's coming in August. This bike will be available in late August in distributors. So that's a little bit clearer. But you're right. Like it's not as easy. And until you can kind of start selling big numbers in the US, it's going to stay at this kind of level.
Okay, interesting. Yeah, I a couple of things is I'm pretty impressed. Like they've pretty much done everything well. Like it's a very if you're kind of doing a custom build and you're looking to buy a frame set, that's a very convincing product. And that fact that you've seen a lot of bikes. The fact that you've seen it in person and went, wow, that looks impressive. Their white paper lays out as well all the different types of carbon they're using. Whether that makes a difference, we don't know because it hasn't really been reviewed. But testing's pretty convincing. The manufacturing looks convincing. I think it's pretty interesting one in the market.
I'm pretty easily convinced though, Jesse. Like, nice paint job, kind of cool looking, fiddly thing that kind of makes me go, ooh, what's that? It's pretty easy to convince me that something's kind of good. Like, let's not overstate how sort of important my sort of froth.
Not to lie, there's a vast majority of people that are buying a bike based on, I saw John on it at the cafe and it looked pretty nice.
True.
That's about as if it ticks that box.
It's about as good as it gets. Yeah, fair enough.
So one of the brands that are pushing this 28 is the optimal tire. That's the race tire. Is Giant, and they especially as part of their Cadex Max 40 wheel systems that you've been testing. So did you manage to go and speak to Giant and get them to convince you to go back to 28 mil tires?
Yes and no.
Okay.
So I spoke to more than just Giant. I spoke to a lot of wheel manufacturers about this.
Okay.
And so there's two things going on here. The answer is no. Can I just there's the real. No one convinced me to go back to 28s.
Okay.
But
you'd have to convince Tadej Pogacar too.
Yeah. Well, why? So why isn't everyone just doing 25 mil minimum rim internals and we're all bouncing around on these wider tires? There is still there's like this internal battle that seems to happen with a lot of the brands, that the aerodynamic people in a brand will continue to maintain that anything wider than a 28 is an aerodynamic disadvantage. And when these things get put into wind tunnels, there is a 2 to 3 to 4 watt difference when it comes to these wider tires. And couple that with the fact that on super, super clean Taiwanese perfect road surfaces, that a 28 will roll as fast, if not faster than a 30. Couple on the aero advantage, you are struggling to convince developers that the rolling resistance for bumpy, shitty roads that the rest of us all ride on is something we should be considered. But what's kind of really the takeaway that I've had from these sort of chats is we give the industry a lot of shit that we get force-fed stuff that as cyclists we don't want. It's almost the opposite here, because the customers are demanding wider tires, and the industry don't really want to do it yet. There's a yet there. They know they'll have to get there eventually, but they almost want to drip feed us the progress down to that. But the customer is talking with where they want to buy these wider rim internals now, and they're seeing that. and it's fast tracking a lot of these changes, and that goes across all the different brands that I saw. Like, so the KDEX stuff was they're still trying to maintain that aerodynamically, specifically with their tires, that it is a faster setup, but they also do believe, well, they also are convinced that the market wants wider. They're going to have to go wider, and that in a lot of circumstances, wider is faster. And it's interesting. Like, these are battles and chats that these people are sitting around at brand tables having, going, "Oh shit, we need to go wider." No, like, it's just like this.
All right.
So no is the answer.
Okay.
They didn't convince me to go back to 28s.
Okay. So you're quite happy. You're running 30s now on your S5 or 32s?
Yes, 30s on the S5.
Okay. And you're
Yep.
quite happy to stay on 30s. You're not going to
100%.
start creeping back. Okay.
100%. Yeah.
Interesting.
There's yeah, and yeah, again, like, no one tried to sell me that, because a lot of the people that talk kind of got rough idea of the kind of riding I did. No one really tried to sell me, you know what, Chris? No, you need to go back to 28s. There's an advantage there. Most people were like, "Yep, we know, yes." So it exists.
Okay.
It's a real thing.
Interesting. Okay. I still do find it a little frustrating, though, that even in the Trek Madone release, that they've come out and 28 mil wide is the ultimate race tire. You know, they still, which, okay, according to what you've said, is potentially it. But when you're making a do-it-all bike, which is, in my opinion, more of a bike for the masses, not a bike for the world tour, and then within that package, your tire technology is arguably more for the extreme case of the world tour and not for the masses, because based on what you've just said and what we're kind of seeing, you know, a 30 mil tire or even a 32 in some cases is more beneficial for the masses than a 28. So it's that contradiction in what we're seeing with some of the marketing and the specs sheets and things like that just irks me. I just have to get off my chest. It seems to be contradictory.
It's 100% a lie. I'm willing to say that. It's 100% a lie. I don't know whether I need to go into this now, but
I think it'd be interesting to talk about what we were sort of chatting about, is in the timelines of the releases of some of these products.
So that's
where
I want to go here. Can I go there now?
Yeah.
So the reason I say that marketing's a lie is because they know where they're taking us. The 2030 product line is already locked in. It's already designed. It's already built. There's a whole other. I'm not.
Do you have
I'm
an
not
example of that?
No, but so there's a whole other world that happens here. I'm just scratching the surface, right? I'm just walking around talking to these people about what's going on. There's a whole behind the curtain crowd. I'm not in the cool team, right? And behind the curtain is all this stuff. Is what SRAM's group said is in 2030. Is what Shimano's timeline is for 2030. Is what Giant's timeline is for 2030. It's all done. The TCR for 2 iterations next is done. And so the reason then I say that the 28s are a lie is because we know that I can guarantee you that the next version will be telling us that the rolling resistance now tells us that 30s are the fastest tire and that they are the superior race tire. And to be honest, like, that timeline and that behind the curtain club, it kind of has sort of taken a bit of a shine off this whole experience for me, because you're walking around going, "Oh, here I am at the latest and greatest, seeing all the industry's finest," and I'm like, actually, I'm not. Like, the people in behind there are seeing where's the stuff that's really going on.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, so so that marketing language that we've talked about it's more bullshit than I thought, just because they already know where they're headed.
Geez, that must be a tough job though, because what can they like? They can't. It's such a slow moving thing to change. You know, what hundreds of thousands of units of stock that, like, you have to be, in the current year, essentially behind the times, unless you're one of these smaller brands that can pivot quicker. So they don't really have a choice but to just try and sell us 5-year-old tech because because you can't just generate 100,000 wheel sets, in a month and then have them in stock.
And that's the answer to that question that I got from that guy is like, or I'm like, well, why can't they just start doing the 2030 stuff now? I was like, it doesn't work like that, Chris. Like, because I'm pissed off. I'm sitting there, I'm pissed off. I'm like, well, I want to know. Well, not only do I want to know, I'm just like, you're going to flog us old tech for the next 5 years, or it's just like this constant thing. And it's just like, that's not how it works, because you've already set up your supply chains and your designs and your factories for a particular design for the next period of time. Like that's, and then it sort of flows through. It's like the max, the wheels that I'm riding at the moment, those Max 40s, they were probably designed 4 years ago. So for them, the 22 mil rim internals 4 years ago was like, whoa, we're going to be market leading. Throw into the mix maybe the kind of way that the Chinese stuff, the Pandapodium stuff, can just maybe get stuff out faster, changes that timeline specifically with wheels a little bit.
And therein lies the skill of the consumer, to be a little savvy in trying to pick what's good, is latest, what are you kind of being sold that it's a little, not sure if that's actually true. Like that's the hard part, because it all sounds amazing, but isn't necessarily.
Can I do one last little bit of insider chat before we move on?
Yeah, please.
So, how we were talking about SRAM Shimano being like we kind of got this sense that everyone was going to go further and further apart. That the SRAM and Shimano person was going to become more clearly defined as the brands kind of go further. And from what I understand, that's going to both brands are doubling down on what they're good at for the next 10 years. So my reading between the lines of that is that Shimano is probably going to they've released this GRX stuff. People are kind of shitty at it, that it's not new age enough, that it's not really trying enough. Okay, I can kind of read the tea leaves there. Does that then mean that they're going to basically go, you know what, we've lost that market. Fuck it. We're just going to absolutely nail road. And then maybe what we were saying about the SRAM thing about being more, okay, well, we're going to be this like absolute ecosystem. This goes with that. This goes. So your group set bits are kind of becoming more mashed together. So almost like the opposite, that they're going to be this, like ecosystem that can combine and work with each other with all sorts of different disciplines. That kind of thing happening was kind of like, you just read the tea leaves, Chris. You can see what's happening. Just go with it. So that's my without getting to go behind the curtain. That's my look behind the curtain.
Okay.
So our speculation isn't miles off, because like the bike industry aren't geniuses. Like you can get a sense of where they're headed.
So kind of following on for that then, this whole 9 thing, this kind of secret little section of the expo where the wheeling and dealings go on. Did you get to have a look around? What's the happening behind there?
All 9 it's too much for me. It is. Yeah, it's if you want to, you could come in and 100% walk out with a small frame manufacturing brand that would, produce pretty good quantity of stuff and get the Nero Show Aero bikes on the market and get it going pretty soon. In terms of like, so I had a look. So Fast Sports are there, like all. It's weird seeing like real people in front of some of these things. I did want to just quickly mention the Wheel Top. Is it Wheel Top? Yeah, Wheel Top brand, that the group set thing.
Yep.
So there, to give you an example, like L2's in the main halls now. right? So they're in with SRAM, Shimano, Giant, L2. You're all in there. So that's that, and their stand was big. So like, just to give you an example, like that means they're like really trying, right? Wheel Twoo, sorry, Wheel Top, Wheel Twoo, it's collab. Wheel Top is up on Hall 9. Like there's 2 levels of Hall 9, like in like a corner of Hall 9, had to be found type thing. And I think we just need to all chill on this Wheel Top. All right. It's
For those that haven't
very,
been following, Wheeltop are another Chinese group set brand that have just released another electronic wireless version in the last few months.
The only reason I want to say I chill, I've just seen a few YouTube videos, like I didn't watch them, but like the thumbnails were like, "Oh, SRAM Shimano, be frightened." Wheel Twoo, sorry, Wheel Twoo. I've got to get this out of my head. Oh my god. Oh my god. Wheel Top are coming. They're not coming. Like it's very, very, very basic tech. It like felt very Remember Microshift? Like the rear derailleur is massive, like big, chunky, heavy slunk of metal. Like it's commuter-ish. Like it's not
right. Okay.
Yeah, we just need to chill on it. I'm not against it, but just don't think it's on near L2. Like it's generations behind that in terms of like the build quality from what I saw. So yeah, just
you're going to piss off a lot of people. I got all these people going, "What'd you buy that for? You should have got the Wheel Top." I'm like,
yeah,
it looks anyway.
You think it looks good?
No. I thought the wheel. I agree with you in that the Wheel Top looked not. It it looked like it came on like a $2,000 OEM Chinese
100%.
bike. I mean, I
100%.
think that's what it's for. But
yeah.
So that's not no gripe.
And like all the group set manufacturers would have like a bike that you could sit and ride and shift through it. Like they didn't have that. They were like just you can just pick up the components, or there was like the machine thing, that like spins the crank, so it just keeps a steady force on it. So yeah. Anyway, that's just what I want to say on that. Yeah. Other than that, look, I'm going to be honest. Like Hall 9, that's for like Hambini and Peak Talk. I don't know what's going on in there. Like there's no shiny objects for Chris to get excited and frothy about in there. So it was probably the Hall, apart from all the e-bike. I'll get into the e-bike stuff, but apart from that, it's probably the space I spent the least time in. But it was interesting, and you've commented on this in the past. Very few of the kit manufacturers. I thought there might be a bit more of that, but it's still just very bike equipment-y. So today's episode is brought to you by Bikes Online, your one-stop shop for everything bike-related. Now, that's whether you are after brands such as POC, Wahoo, 100% SRAM Laser, a new road bike like the Polygon Helios. Bikes Online has you covered. Jesse, on the website, what's on there?
Given that Bikes Online have come to the table with a discount code applied to a few of the products, I want to go through and just show off this gravel bike because with 5% off, this Tambora G7 price now originally is $2,999. That's already the discounted price, and then with the code Nero5, that takes another 150 Australian dollars off. So you're getting a full carbon gravel bike, clearance for up to 45mm tires with carbon wheels, with SRAM Apex 1x12 speed for the price of $2,849, which is a killer price for that bike. I love my gravel bike. I think a lot of people would be good having a N+1 gravel bike, good for the rain, good for a bit of adventure stuff if you want to get into that, good for commuting, and that's a killer price for that build.
Yeah, so just to reiterate that code, it is Nero5. It's 5% off those already discounted items. They've got their 30-day bike returns. They've got the 5% price match guarantee and the $79 for free shipping. Guys, the way I would think about this is add this website to your quiver of sites to go and look at, to check out when you are searching for your brands and your bike parts, because There's going to be quite a few occasions where you will find what you need on this site, and it will most likely be cheaper. Again, I'll drop those links to those products down below, and thank you very much to Bikes Online for supporting this show. I did want to talk about the Scope wheels, but I'm going to wait maybe till I get back because they haven't sent me any of their white paper stuff. So this was just me sort of taking notes on the chat, but it was an interesting. This was again one of these ones you just sort of walk around in, and then eventually you're just walking past millions of wheel brands. And then I kind of had another look at this Scope wheel brand. I was like, hey, what's going on here? And you sort of went over there. And I'm like, oh, so they are actually 3D printing their hubs, which 3D printing. And my first question was like, I don't care. Like 3D printing, what does that mean to me? Like, just who cares how this is made? And the guy's like, yeah, I get that. But he was kind of selling me the idea that the reason you 3D print your hubs is you can make them lighter and you can make them more intricate to work better with carbon spokes, because that's where they're all going, carbon spokes. And so where the carbon spoke integrates with the hub, you can do a better, more intricate design with the 3D printing. Now, I kind of got all frothy and excited about that because that's the kind of thing that gets Chris all excited. But we'll do some name dropping now. So I'm at lunch with the boys with Llama and Hambini and Ronan and a few other troops, and I was telling them about how excited I got about this, and Hambini's like, "Shut up, Miller! Like, go and have a look." And I was like, "What do you think from an engineering perspective?" And he's like, "Total crap." I'm like, what? Don't burst my bubble like that. Anyway, so he wanted me to go back and have a look because he was saying that the 3D printing system wouldn't allow the axle to be a perfect cylinder, just in terms of the way that the 3D printing works. So anyway, I have
You're losing me.
no take neither here nor there, but I would like to go back and I'm still about them. I reckon there's something in that. So I'm gonna anti-ream them as far as he's concerned.
Even in all this chat, we've only really mentioned a few brands. Like, there's got to be, like, for such a big show, there's got to be more brands. Like, is it just, are there all just sort of random bike brands, particularly doing road stuff, or is it actually quite scarce?
Yes and no. So you're right. Like, the big brands aren't here. The big brands like Trek, Specialized, Campy.
Is Canyon there?
No, Canyon's not here. Yeah, so we can probably name a few, like Pinarello aren't here. But then there are brands that, like Scott, which are bigger than we see, definitely, that are here, that have big presences.
Was Cube there?
Yes, Cuba here.
Okay.
Felter here. Who was it?
What are they there for? Who are they promoting to? To distributors? Shops?
Yeah, suppliers. Yeah. Suppliers, distributors. This is where they do their they basically sell their wares to distributors, and the distributors will then, there's all these meeting rooms. So mostly you've got like a where the bikes are and the salespeople walking around. And then actually a lot of the people aren't salespeople. They're actually the marketing director of the company. So that's why you're here, is because the person manning the stall tends to be someone of a position in the brand. And so then you go and you sit down and you do your meeting and you work out how many felt aero bikes you're going to buy for your distributor in West Flanders for the next 18 months. And that's the main purpose of this. And yeah, so they're not, and I've spoken about the scale a lot, and that it is like overly massive. But when you do boil it down to the road thing, so there's 5 halls, big halls. Really, only 2 of them, 2.5 of them, are road and mountain bike. The rest is all e-bike, all e-bike, all mobility. And And the size of those halls are triple the size of the road and mountain bike hall. So if you then want to split it into just road, you're probably saying 1.5 halls. And now you've got sort of gravel kind of creeps into that. So road and then performance road is an even smaller element of that. So whilst it is kind of pretty large in scale and overwhelming, when you start sort of nailing down on it, it does shrink a bit. So guys like GP Llama and DC Rainmaker get more out of it because there's the whole tech element on top of that, and the tech element can come with the power meters and the trainers and all that kind of stuff. So that's another element on top, which interests me, but not to the same extent, obviously. So for them, there's more of that, and there's then the opportunity to kind of talk to the people about what's coming up and all that kind of thing. But yeah, I don't know. Like ultimately, it was really good to come here, see it. Do I need to come back anytime soon? Probably not. I think we could probably do a Shanghai, Taipei bike show or a Shanghai bike show next year or the year after and tick that box. I don't think we desperately need to make an appearance at this very often. It was kind of fun seeing. I mean, it's very rare you get to sit down and just talk YouTube with YouTubers. Like that's super rare. So I kind of really enjoyed that. Kind of hearing different people's stories and like the content that they're trying to get out from this is, like them trying to work out what product's going to pop for their Eurobike video is kind of interesting.
The problem is the Tour de France is on, so it's very difficult to cut through like my YouTube homepage. Good luck getting a Eurobike video through with all the Tour de France
that was literally the chat. So Cav won the other day, and that was Cav won on day one of Eurobike, and like they all said, like views were just massively down. And I'm like, well, yeah, like who cares about classified's Z grade collaboration when Cav's just broken the record? Like, come on. Like my little dig at classified.
What did they do to you, Chris? They must. They
didn't offer me a coffee.
Sorry, who are you?
Like me.
Oh, you make YouTube videos. They've done something.
Can I just say? So there is a bit like it is. That's what it is like. You do go up, and then most people don't know who you are, and like, who are you? Like, are you a distributor? I'm like, no. I make YouTube videos, and then they kind of do the oh god sort of thing, and then they're wondering whether I'm worth their time even talking to, and some people aren't. They're just like, I don't care, like go talk to someone else. So yeah, all right. So I'm having this is the longest I've had off the bike in years. I'm hating life right now, so I'm going to live vicariously through you, Jesse. The Tavelo has arrived. Have you been out on it? Can you give me some chats on it?
Okay, so I've had it for a week, but I've had the flu, and I've ridden. I think I've done 3 or 4 rides on it. So I am a few weeks away from actually giving some good feedback. But yeah, I've ridden it, and I guess we can chat about it a little bit. I just want to be careful because, spoiler alert, I'm very happy with it, but I just haven't spent a lot of time with it, so I don't want to go and start going into heaps of detail until I've given it enough time to test. But yeah, so build...
Jesus, how many caveats do you want to put on this? Bloody hell, come on. You're under the pressure now.
I've ridden it for like 4 hours.
It's not as easy as you thought, is it, to talk about a bike? No. It's all good and well to shit on Chris when he's not able to talk about the S5. Okay,
not when half the point of me getting in the first place was to actually test it, not just to say it rides really well and everyone should go and buy it. So, but yeah, I will talk about it because I don't want to be some annoying person just sort of harping it up. So the build of it went pretty fine. The only things wrong with the build was... So it's a press fit bottom bracket, but the bottom bracket that it comes with and the Cybre bottom bracket that I got for it are you press one bearing in and then the other side threads in. We could not get the other side threaded in. It kind of got halfway in and it was taking so much torque and it just wouldn't screw in. The mechanic, so Jared at Brunello, he thought that the reason why it wasn't screwing in, and Joe had a similar issue, was because potentially the alignment wasn't bang on, so that you were sort of trying to screw it in, and then it was just ever so slightly misaligned, that it was just getting way too hard, too much tension in the cup. So basically, we ditched that bottom bracket. I went over to Case and just bought a regular SRAM dub press fit bottom bracket, and then he pressed the cups in, and they went in. They went in well. So it wasn't like an issue with the sizing of the bottom bracket. Maybe it was like an alignment thing, not sure. So anyway, that problem got solved just by using a regular press in bottom bracket. The only other thing was it was a little hard to get the hoses through the handlebars. There was no guides in there, and it was a bit just difficult to thread through. We kind of had to like have the magnet out, and we were kind of trying to thread the cables through for a little while. So that took longer than Jared said would be common on some other builds, some other frames he's done, where they either come with a guide already through and you can kind of run the hose through. I think that's the term. Or it's just the tracking of the hose or the cable through the part, either the chainstay or the handlebars is just smoother, so it's just somehow goes through. Aside from that, the build was fine. The weight of the bike, so with industry standard weigh, no pedals, but with head unit mount, bottle cages, ready to ride just without the pedals, in a size 56 equivalent, it was 7.2 kilos with 65, 75 front and rear deep wheels, which I thought was lighter than I thought it was going to be. I was pretty blown away with that weight.
That's wild.
Yeah. And that's with, 30 mil front tire, 32 mil rear tire. So, with pedals, with the Asiomas that have the power meter in them, it's 7.5 ready to ride. Which, frame set was, the frame was 1,050 grams and the fork was about 380 something. So it's the same weight as an SL7 Pro, a bit heavier than an SL8, which is crazy light. It's lighter than the Giant Propel frame set, lighter than the Canyon Aero non-CFR model frame set. So, that weight for a build. I mean, what's your S5 weigh?
Well, with one by, it's 7.5. But my wheels are like 1,600 grams.
Yeah,
they're not light wheels.
Yeah,
yeah.
So
that's amazing.
I mean, the S5 is a fully fledged aero bike, so obviously it's not apples to apples, but like that was pretty lightweight. Okay, so now what else can we get into? First few rides, what have I noticed coming from the TCR? Oh, group set install, by the way, fine, no issues, except the app's in Chinese. So you download the L2 app because you do the adjustments for the derailleurs in the app. So you download it. It connects via Bluetooth straight away, no issues. But the app's in Chinese, so it asks you for a password and then all these steps. So I had to screenshot the app, open it up in the Apple Photos, click translate to see what the field was, and I was like, oh, it's asking for a password. Okay, so put a password in. So, and then I finally get into the app, and then I'm trying to find where the settings button is so I can change the language. So again, screenshot, translate. So my app is now in English. But that was kind of funny that I'm going through multiple menus to get to the language settings. You would have thought when you download the app, the language selection is the first option. But alas, they've buried it in a bunch of Chinese menus. The app, but it connects fine. It works well. So it's all good. The actual bike, so comparing it to the TCR, it is obviously a little heavier. So it's about 200 grams. The total build is about 200 grams heavier than my TCR was. With the light wind space wheels, it's about 300 grams heavier. So, it's a bit heavier, but it's got disc brakes.
And you feel the weight though, Jesse?
I did an effort in Centennial Park. So what does the TCR do well? Well, it's stiffness to weight. So that feeling of that snappiness feeling when you get out of the saddle, like that feeling is somehow basically identical on the Tavelo with those wheels. So I didn't get that classic aero bike sluggishness that people mention, that it just doesn't accelerate as fast. It doesn't feel like it gets up to speed that well. That thing, blindfold me out of the saddle on the little uphill section of Centennial Park doing an effort. It feels just like the TCR. So massive box tick there that it doesn't feel slow. Obviously, it's got way wider tires, so it is noticeably more comfortable. There's a section of Centennial Park, and you'll know this, Chris. Centennial Park is all hot mix, super smooth. But for some reason, there's about a 30-meter stretch, which is chip seal, just it's kind of rough over hard, where for some reason they didn't put the hot mix over. And every time you're doing an effort, usually on the TCR, I would divert over just into the car lane where it's hot mix, just for that section, and slide back over because I didn't want to go over that rough section where you kind of get that low level vibration. It is a marked difference. I just plow straight over that section now, and I'd say it's about 75, 80% smoothed out that section where I can notice it's gone slightly rougher, but it's not a big deal at all. So like that, I can still feel bumps like on the way there if I kind of up a curb, down a curb, that sort of thing. Obviously, I'm still feeling the big bumps, but that low level vibration roughness is really smoothed out. Is that something you feel on as well?
Oh God!
Wait
till you actually leave Centennial Park, Jesse.
Okay.
Yes,
right.
It's going to blow your mind. Just real quick, the functionality of the group set.
Yep.
Have you any thoughts on that at this stage? I'm not really interested in your brakes. I'm interested in your shifting.
Shifting. Okay, front shifting is actually better. I don't know if it's just tuned better, but it is better than it was with the 11-speed Shimano front derailleur with the same brand chainring. So I don't know what's going on with that front derailleur.
Big claim.
It is noticeably better than it was on the TCR with those chainrings. So the front shifting is really good, like very, very, very good. Happy with that. The rear shifting is not as good. It works totally fine. I don't know what the right wording of that is. The shifts into a harder gear down the cassette are good. The shifts going up the cassette are a little clunky.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't make noise, and it shifts fine, but it's not crispy like a Dura Ace. Now keep in mind it's the L2 rear derailleur with the in-color Zoni cassette with a Shimano 12-speed chain. So it's got 3 different brands components there. And I've only done like 4 rides on it. So potentially there needs to be a little work done on just maybe finding up the indexing, because in the app when you set it up, it comes stock with the kind of the spacing of the shifts as they want it, but you can fine tune individually each gear. So potentially I could sharpen it up a little bit if I spent some time with it. Overall, though, like I'm doing efforts in there, like it shifts fine, but it is the shifts into an easier gear are a little slightly crunchy.
Yeah, that's always going to be the challenge. That going back up the block will be interesting. I'll be really interested to see whether it needs constant re-indexing or whether it holds its position.
Exactly. So that's kind of the same thing I have is, firstly, can I improve it just by getting it dialed in better, potentially? And does it hold the position it's in now? Overall, though, how is the shifting? It's good. I would say the shifting is good. It's not excellent, but
that's what you wanted.
It.
You wanted good. And you've said it. If you get good, that's a win.
Yep.
Yeah.
So that's
interesting.
Yep. That's kind of that's the shifting. The only thing is, I'll just mention as well, I don't know whether it's the shape of the shifters or the handlebars, but when I first installed them, there wasn't a flat transition between the running off the handlebar going into the hood lever. I like to have it dead flat. It was kind of off the handlebar, it was dipping down a little bit, and then it was coming back up on the shifter. So to smooth that out, if I had to lift the shifter up, the shifters would be pointing too far upwards. So I've fixed that. I've just like put a little bit of handlebar tape just in that little gap between the shifter and the handlebar, and that's flattened it out. But I think it's potentially a combination of just the shape of those integrated handlebars and the shape of the L2 shifter is it does have that slight dip, which I don't like.
Yeah.
But I fixed it with a bit of essentially a bodge. Couple of other things. The saddle so far is pretty comfortable. It's that AliExpress carbon one. It's fine. Feels pretty good. We'll need more time.
I thought you said on day one you didn't like it.
So this is the thing. I bought two. So I bought the one that I put a video up of on Instagram. That's the one I've got on there now, which is good. It's 160 grams. Just for a laugh, I bought a 115 gram one, also carbon. That was like $55 from the same brand. It is absolutely terrible. It says it's weighted up to 120 kilos, but because it's so light, you sit on it and then the middle of it just sags down in the middle. So it doesn't actually hold its shape. And that was the first ride I did when you're in there. And I'm like, can you like, and you looked at the side, oh, it looks pretty good. I'm like, yeah, well, wait till I put my weight on it. It just sags in the middle. So that was a total absolute fail. So just be careful with that one. The one, so I instantly, when I got back from that, I'd swapped it over to the one I had originally bought. And that one so far is quite good. Then this question is like, how fast is it? Which has been a bit of a rabbit hole, and I don't want to spend too much time on it because I just need to ride it more. I feel really dirty even doing this after riding it like 4 times. First look report. I've done 2 efforts on it. Now, the first, at my power output. So what I did was, over the last like 3 months of training, when I do my zone 4 efforts, they're always they have been between about 350 to 360 watts. I got all the average speeds from all the ones I did. Got the average power and the average speed. Again, these are done on different days, different clothing. Interestingly, though, the power for all of those efforts, I'll bring them up now. They were between 40 minutes and 60 minutes long. Power for each of them between 348 watts to 361 watts, so quite a tight band of power. And the speed was always within 41.3 kilometers an hour to 42.2 kilometers an hour. And so I've got...
This is a great database. Right.
So I'll send you the screenshot so you can put up. So I pulled 9 of them that were... that were fair, in the right conditions, that sort of thing, with the right power. Average power, 357 watts on the TCR, was getting me averaging about 41.7 kilometers an hour. And so that's kind of, I always know it was 41.5. It was, 41.9, all the same. Now, we went in the first day I got the bike, did an effort. You're in there with me. I do the effort, finish it, 30 minutes, 359 watts. I'm at 43.5. I'm going, shit. This is at the same power. It's like a 1.8k an hour faster than any of my other efforts. So I'm instantly going, okay, that's just one data point. Obviously, I need to do more of these efforts to average them out. But like, I'm like, sweet. It's a lot faster. Then I went out today after I've had the flu, gone back out, did another 20-minute effort. Keep in mind, it is quite cold here, blowing a gale. I go out, average 41 at 350 watts or something. I go, okay, oh, that's not that fast. That's back down sort of bottom end of my TCR efforts. And then I realized for that entire effort, the first one I did, I had Chris Miller sitting on my wheel. And when you have someone sitting on your wheel, it improves your aerodynamics, lessens the drag. So I have a feeling that one of the reasons why that speed was so fast was because you were on my wheel. So I got to kind of get rid of that one. The effort today was very windy. So, maybe that was on the lower end.
It wasn't great conditions, even the one that I was sitting on your wheel. That's why that blew my mind, that result.
Yeah, because it was middle of the day. I had like a long sleeve regular jersey on.
Windy,
and it was
sou'wester.
Windy. Yeah, and it was like, oof. That's why I got home. I was like, holy shit, this thing's a rocket.
I actually came away from that experience like terrified. I was like, holy shit, he just gained 1.5 kilometers. Like, what just happened? Retirement's looming for me.
Now, keep in mind, I did a rough calculation. I thought it would be around 20 watts faster at this speed.
Yeah, you did.
And 20 watts saving is about 1 kilometer an hour. So I thought 1 kilometer an hour for 20 watts would be quite nice. So to go at 1.8 kilometers an hour faster, I was kind of going, like, this is incredible. That's why you don't give feedback when you've ridden the bike for a week. So essentially, I don't know really how fast it is. Keeping in mind, the rear tire is measuring 33.4 millimeters wide.
Wow.
And the front tire is a 30 mil front tire, and it's measuring 32.3. So, and as I said, Centennial Bike is basically hot mix. So it's kind of, if I can get it faster in those conditions, which I'm expecting it should be because it's an Aero shaped bike. I mean, the fork, the head tube, the down tube, it's entirely different from the TCR. 36 centimeter wide bars. It should be faster, deeper wheels. So, but essentially, I need to do way more riding on it to actually kind of start to figure that out. Right now, I don't actually know how fast it is.
Just on the wheels, just super quick, I forgot to say this. I asked a lot of the wheel brands because they were testing. They were telling me like their wheels compared to the Rovals, blah 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 blah, and the wind tunnels. And I asked them, "Are you testing the Chinese ones?" And in the last 3 years, they've started testing them.
Okay.
And obviously, people in these brands are going to tell me that their wheels are the fastest, but the biggest admission I got was that they're getting closer.
Okay.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that because I forgot to mention that.
Very general, but okay. Good.
Yeah, but it's interesting, like that they are actually testing them because they now actually do see them as competitors.
Okay, cool. Yeah,
I thought it was something.
Yeah. Okay, other little tidbits of feedback. I then went to check my tire pressure because I thought, obviously it's quite smooth in there. I should probably be running a little bit high tire pressure. So I was pumping them up according to the Seka and the Zip tire pressure calculators for my weight at about 60 psi on my Lezyne pump. 60 psi. I also have that Psych Plus electronic pump thing, and then just out of interest, I put that on. And it's saying they're at 48 psi, and then it starts going. So I set the pump to 60 psi, and it's going to pump them up. So I'm trusting that the Psych Plus pump is accurate. In which case, I've been running the tires about 10 psi lower at 60 psi than I thought I had.
Interesting.
So I'm going to start now using the Silka tire pressure calculator for my width tires, and pump them up using the Psych Plus pump, because I'm pretty sure that Lezyne pump, which is probably 10 years old now, that gauge must be shot because it's not even close. Like that's 10 psi at 60 psi is a huge percentage difference. It's miles off. Is that shocking to you? I was kind of like, what? But I've been using that on my TCR. I don't know what I've been doing. I've been going absolutely blind with my tire pressure. And like the rolling, sorry, just to add there, it's important because the rolling resistance between 50 psi and 60 psi is a lot across two tires. That's like, that could be 3 or 4 watts per tire. That could be all the gains of my Aero bike gone out because my pressure's been too low.
Well, but more than that, I mean, potentially years of efforts, the actual data is compromised. I mean, really what you should be doing is continuing to ride with what your Lezyne pump says, because if you've been running 10 psi low for the last 3 years, now to suddenly start running the correct psi, you know what I mean? So I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't
that's
know
why it's going to hard to compare. Although I did feel like my pressure was appropriate for the last 2 years, so maybe it's costing me more now. Anyway, so I'm going with the electronic pump gauge because I need to run it at the appropriate pressure for the surface I'm riding on. But that was also interesting one because if I have been riding around with 33 millimeter tires at 48 psi,
God, yeah,
it's a bit slow. So that's a wait and see, that one.
Oh no, good rabbit hole. I'm impressed with that. Well done.
So probably just maybe a notice there. If you are kind of going down this tire width rabbit hole, just check your pressures against a couple of pumps because you might be off like I was.
Look at you talking about tire pressure. Next minute you'll be getting gravel, talking about the different seams of gravel. Yes.
I had good. A couple of other things just to mention. The shorter cranks Again, I need more time, but initial impressions were didn't really. It felt like in my efforts, I felt quite comfortable. So I didn't like. It's not like I got and went, "Oh, I'm riding a different bike." It felt good in the efforts. It felt really good. So I felt comfortable. Didn't really get back pain or anything. So I'm pretty sure that it's going to be a good solution for me for that. When I'm getting low and tucked in, it feels nice. I did some sprints on one of the session, and my sprint power was still. I wasn't like I've lost 200 watts. I was still doing like over 1400 watts for my sprints, and that's pretty. I'm usually, if I'm fresh like I am now and kind of heavy, I'll usually be doing 1500, on a really good day for a peak power. And I was still doing over 1400 for a few seconds, so I'm still able to sprint, for whatever that means. So yeah, the initial thoughts on the pretty shorter crank length is I am pretty happy with that decision so far, but yeah, we'll see how that one plays out.
That chainring looks sick. I'm very jealous of that, actually.
It's quite nice. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. I mean, like, so off the bat, I'm very happy with it. Once I can dial in this tire pressure, hopefully get a few more efforts in, I'm hoping that it is going to get me that sort of kilometer an hour ish faster in those efforts. I would hope to see that. If I don't see that, and let's say it is a similar speed to what I was doing on the TCR, okay, it's definitely more comfortable because of the tire width. But I'll be pretty disappointed. Like if I'm still going out for those efforts and this is still 41-ish, 42k an hour, I'm gonna have to go back to the drawing board here because that's this has been a lot of effort put in to not ride any faster at 360 watts. So
there's no way. Yeah, I mean, there's no way this is slower. I mean, God love the TCR, but it's not a fast bike in a straight line. Yeah. Like it's just not. Even the Seka Spear data that they use, my version of the TCR is their test bike, and it was an outlier compared to anything aerodynamically.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I'll keep giving that a run. Okay, sorry, one other thing, the wheels, those super deep CRW Works wheels. Because they're so light, I think that's contributing to the fact that it essentially out of the saddle, accelerating, going up the little inclines feels pretty similar to the TCRs. Thanks quite a lot to those wheels. Geez, they pick up a crosswind though. If you can only have like one set, I would not be buying the 65, 75s. Get the 50, 60s. They are. I'm heavy and can handle my bike in crosswinds well, and even it's been pretty windy here, but that's pretty. They pick up a crosswind definitely. So if you kind of already got a few sets of wheels and you want like a dead calm, out and out race wheel, they're great. But like, yeah, particularly as well, I think because the rim's so light.
They are super deep. Definitely super deep. But I was going to ask you whether you'd thought that because of the wide, and I've found this, that because of the wider tires, I feel more planted when I do get hit. So, and I get quite affected by crosswinds a lot of the time. But I've found that the wider the tire, it almost feels like, I'm more glued to the road and less bounced around, especially like on the backside of, the backside of the park where you might get hit by a little gust or something like that. Okay. So I'm interested that you did feel it.
I just don't really have anything to compare it to in terms of what you're saying because I've never ridden tires this wide. But because the front wheel is 65 mil deep because it's 65 centimeters, so it's deeper. And because Joe did a whole video where he was testing the 50, 60s versus I think there was the Rovals. And he mentioned a similar thing, but he thought it was also because the rim is so light, you've got like nothing holding it down because the rim is so light and it's deep. It just blows around. Like it is kind of dangerous. I wouldn't really recommend the 65, 75s. If you live somewhere windy, get the shallower ones. So I'm actually probably it means I'm going to have to figure out something else for a front wheel. Because if I'm racing, if we're doing if Heffron starts up, I'm going back and doing Heffron. It's a 50k an hour, nor'easter or something. Like that's going to be very difficult to handle. So I'm going to have to get a shallower front.
So the Super Bowl started this week, Jesse. The tour's underway. I'm saying it's best ever.
Yep.
Best ever.
Mm-hmm.
Best tour ever. It's going to be a tour of the generations. We've already, you got the Cav things happened. Jonas has shown that he's on a pretty similar level, hopefully, to Poggy. I just think we're in for one. I think there's a blow up stage where like a second tier favorite potentially gets a little bit of an advantage and gets closer to them. I don't know. I'm super pumped. Is there anything specific you want to talk about?
Cav's running Aero bottles. So I bought Aero bottles. Yeah, I thought that was cool.
Yep. Can I talk about Jonas's S5 on the Galibier then?
Yeah. Geez, that's a fish out of water.
So this fascinated me, all right? And I went deep conspiracy on it because, and I've heard this from Tavelo people, that on a mountain stage, Jonas will not ride a bike that weighs a gram over 6.8 kilos. Okay. So unless that mindset has changed, which I highly doubt, that setup he was riding was 6.8 kilos. And okay, so it's not out of the realms of possibility given, okay, so I'm riding a 54, he's on a 52, he's on the smaller bike. So running a 1x setup with the old SRAM Red, okay, so a few grams in that, with the 50 mil reserve wheels, which are 1,600 grams, I'm getting to just under 7.5 kilos. So to drop the wheels off, we can probably go down to those 30s. We're probably going to lose 250 grams, maybe. Then potentially some lighter tires. New SRAM Red, we're probably saving, I think, about 200 grams in that. And we're around 7. But I was really struggling to find the remaining bit. And all I could potentially find was the paint. Now, my paint job might be a bit heavier than that new one that they're running, which I am told is quite light, but still paint difference. Like, is that dramatic? So anyway, I was just, and I should also mention, so he was running a 52 front chainring with a 1036, whereas I have a 50. So potentially a tiny bit lighter.
Okay.
But yeah, so where my conspiracy Chris brain went was, that's a new frame. That was a custom-made S5 that had shaved off a few grams, which, don't get me wrong, I massively, massively rate. I was so excited to see him on an S5 one by on that mountain stage. You have no idea how excited I was to see that. In fact, you probably do. But yeah, and then I also just want to say that people were saying after the race, that one by would have held him back on the descent. That's why Poggy pulled away from him. Like, that 52.10, he was not spinning that 52.10 out.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think Pog was on a 54.11 from what I gather.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I just wanted to sort of say that, but
I'm just, the reason why I maybe look a bit distracted is I'm scouring YouTube to see if anyone doing the bike checks have weighed his S5. So
no, they haven't,
because they've done a video here, which was by Bike Radar,
he's on
but they were
pedals as well.
Okay. They've only had his R5.
Yeah.
Oh, Cam Nichols
potentially a new reserve wheel. I thought maybe he's running a lighter weight hub. I didn't see because I have the 250s. Maybe he's probably on the 180s. I mean, there is a route to get down to it. I just love the fact that he did. Yeah. Speedplay pedals. There's probably a bit in that too. Yeah, now I think about it.
But it's an interesting comparison when you saw them riding side by side because you've got Pogacar who's on a glorified climbing bike, but with the MV 4.5s, which I'm pretty sure that's like a 50 front and a slightly deeper rear. So a climbing bike with aero wheels, or Jonas who's then on an aero bike with climbing wheels, and then you've got Fingerguard's tire width. Those Vittoria courses were measuring under 30 mil wide, so they were measuring like 29.8. I just saw in the Bike Radar video, whereas Pogacar's 30 mil wide tires measure 32. So the setups, that's quite a different. One's got one by like those. That is, if you put it all together, two very different setups. It's pretty interesting that the different ways to go about it. I'm going to keep an eye out to see if someone manages to pick up his S5 to weigh it. Because if that is 6.8, are we going custom layup territory? Like,
I think so.
Because the math's not mathing here. Like, we
don't
know.
It gets close. I mean, it does get close. I can't really factor in exactly what new red is giving it weight saving wise as well. That's a slight unknown for me. Yeah.
Well, it would be. I mean, it'd have to be 6.8. Like,
yeah.
there's just no way he'd be riding a 7 kilo bike.
100%.
He's tiny.
100%.
So
he's 100% on a 6.8 kilo bike. No way he's not doing that. I mean, I kind of saw it and went, "Ooh, is there an avenue for Chris to do that?"
Yeah.
Maybe
someone. That's the commenters are always good at that. Someone let us know if someone can do the maths on that. I'm sure there's someone's had a pick through and can figure that one out.
Just quick pro racing. Can we just give a quick shout out to a young Aussie who won the prologue of the Tour of Austria? Cam Rogers. Wild. He's come out of nowhere and snuck a win over Philippe, Mr. Ganna.
Yeah, incredible. It doesn't really have that many UCI results yet either, so that's crazy. Obviously, pretty good bloodstream there. Sorry, I meant like his genetics, not fucking. I hate cycling. Why can't I? Actually, we're part of the problem. We do talk about Toby. He comes from a good lineage of professional cyclists, so it's something that was always a thing as well domestically. A prologue would always throw up some weird results because there might be someone that was never particularly good in the bunch, and then there'd just be some random prologue, and you're like, who? Like, I didn't know they were that strong. So that's pretty cool that he's managed to show, and that'll get noticed for him because he's still on their development team. Like, that's a pretty good, you one result like that, and you've got some watts, so that's good for.
I reckon Mads Pedersen probably had a look at that race and went, "Geez, can I get back on that Madone as well, or is it just for the development team?" Speaking of Trek bikes, Jesse Coyle.
Yes.
The Madonda officially launched, much to no one's surprise.
It did.
I keep my receipts. People in the comments. Amonda gone. Madone exists. White paper released. And I'm not sure. Yeah, we're going to go through the white paper because it's a load of junk. Can I just say right now? That's a load of junk.
We're a little late to the party now because a lot of people have given their opinions, but I want to do it anyway because it's kind of an interesting one to look at. So I want to actually take a step back in time. Actually, first thing, their webinar they did, kind of talking through the bike. What a production. That's how you do it. I mean, facts and logic aside, if you just drank the Kool-Aid and just accepted everything they said, you're buying a Madonda. That is really well done. So you got to take your hat off for that because that takes time and effort. So kudos for that. But I just think this is a big change for the Madone. So I did do a little walk down memory lane on the Madone. So if you can please indulge me, let's go back, and it's 2003. And they release the Madone as Trek's do it all. That's their road race bike. Their Tour de France running bike is the Trek Madone. It didn't have anything aero about it. It was just a stiff carbon race bike.
It was named after a climb.
Yes, it definitely was. And it's still, that's interesting. Still is. It wasn't until 10 years later in 2013 where any mention of aerodynamics came into the design and the marketing around the bike. That 2013 frame still didn't look like an aero bike, but it had some of these camtail tubing with the backs cut off, and it was part of their marketing speak. That was in 2013, so that was the first step then. 2 years later, in 2015, after having aerified slightly the Madone, they then released the Amonda. So it's only 2015 since the Amonda came into town, and that's where they then went, okay, we need a climbing-specific bike to kind of balance out our now more aero-focused Madone, and that's where you got your Amonda that was had no regard for aerodynamics. Then the year after the Amonda was introduced, so in 2016, that's where the Madone went full aero. Kind of the silhouette of the bike that you're probably used to thinking now. So all deeper tubes, and basically went full aero bike because they then had the previous year released their climbing bike, which was going to satisfy the people that wanted that. Since then, those two models were developed independently side by side, and then it's not until 8 years later that they've then combined the bikes. One of the things that gets me with the combining of these bikes, though, in saying that the Madone is going to replace the Amonda, is that in their webinar, when they mentioned, they said that the Madone was originally designed to replace the Amonda. It wasn't until, according to them, they did their testing that they realized that it was going to be aero enough that it could actually replace the Madone, and they say that's why they released the one bike. I think most of us that have followed the Trek story for a while know that it is, I would say, highly likely that that is just marketing spin, and the only reason, I would say, why they're doing that is just to keep the level, the SKUs down, reduce the amount of stock, make it potentially simpler for the consumer. So that's a pretty cool story, right? If you just believe what they say, it's kind of convincing. But the problem I have, firstly, is that the Madone 2024, as it was a bike just before they updated it, wasn't a top-level aero bike aerodynamically. It was good, but it wasn't the fastest aero bike, which they've then been able to make a do-it-all version that's just as fast. Because according to Tour Magazine's testing, the Trek Madone, the latest version, so basically the 2024 version before they made it the Madonda, was 207 watts for Tour Magazine's testing. Now, keep in mind the Canyon Aero is 202 watts, the System 6 is 203, the S5 is 202. Now, small difference there, but according to Tour Magazine, the Madone was still 5 watts off that top rung of mainstream brand aero bikes. And then you've got the sub 200 watt bikes, which is like the Simplon Pride, probably as well as fast as that new Dare bike we've talked about will be. It's probably going to be 200, sub 200. The Van Rysel new aero bike, which they're testing, that's also probably going to, I would estimate, sub 200. So you've got a bike that was already not top of the aero bikes. Now, you could argue that it was more well-rounded. Perhaps it rode better than a System 6 and was maybe a bit lighter, which is fair enough to say. But just aerodynamically, it wasn't keeping up with them according to Tour Magazine's testing. That's one of my main problems with this new bike, is that they say it's as light as the current Amonda, which is okay.
Debatable.
We can say cool, debatable. Reason why that's, I'm going to go back to the aerodynamics, but just on that weight, Dave Arthur weighed his because he went to the press junket. It was a size medium large with new SRAM red, bottle cages, head unit mount, no pedals. So basically the standard way to weigh a bike. And it was 7.3 in a size medium large. That's heavier than than my China bike. So they've said it's lighter than the Amonda. Look, maybe it's possible to do that, but the actual weights that the guys have been testing hasn't been. I mean, that's not a light bike. That's
the excuse that I'm hearing a lot of the time is that the Bontrager wheels are quite heavy, but I don't buy it. I mean, they are a little bit heavy. They're sort of 1,500 gram kind of area.
But they come with the bike. That's the bike.
Yeah, I mean that's your package. So you can't be selling us a lightweight bike that's building up to that sort of that level. And when I say that, it's 20K. for this bike. So, it's not like you just get the Bontrager wheels and swap them out for something else. It's like, hang on. Anyway, sorry.
Yep. So it's fairly decent weight. I would not call that a class-leading climbing bike weight. So we can say that. Now, in their white paper, we'll get into the aerodynamics. They've tested the bike at 200 watts aerodynamically. So they test the new bike with their Aero bottles, keep in mind, versus the old Madone with round bottles, and then compared to the Amonda with round bottles at 200 watts. And they're like, oh, well, it's kind of similar speed, same speed as the old Madone. Yeah, with Aero bottles and at an irrelevant speed, because who cares about aerodynamics at 200 watts? Oh, and it's faster than the Amonda. Well, I'm calling the old Amonda was lighter. So, okay, it's faster than a climbing bike. Okay, fair enough. I think they are really doing a big... That's not the industry standard way of testing your frame aerodynamically. Your bike, sorry, aerodynamically. You got to do... That's way off what the Seka Spear did, which we talked about. They tested at 40k an hour across a range of yaw angles. Fair enough. To test.
You can't have your cake and eat it too with this chat as well, because you can't on the one hand tell us that this is the choice of the pros. This is designed by, we asked the pros what they want, and this is the bike that they wanted, a professional cycling, elite. And then do your testing at 200 watts and say, oh, but it's better to test at 200 watts because it's a more real world speed for the everyday rider. And you're like, well, hang on. A second 100%. Ago, you're telling me Mads wants this, and now you're testing it for friggin' Chris Miller on an endurance ride. Like, what's going on? So this is another bit of bullshit.
No, I'm very curious to see when Tour Magazine get their hands on it to test it. I would be very curious. I think if Tour Magazine test it and it's within, I reckon it will be 5 watts slower than the old Madone. Because
this will bomb.
Yeah.
This will bomb out. I mean, all the pretend weight saving, or the aero savings that they've claiming are the package, are the rider package. We've made the bars more ergonomic to get into a more aero position. We've got Aero bottles on there. Like it's all. This is going to bomb in their testing.
Well, yeah. Well, let's say I'd be very surprised if it's within 5 watts of the old Madone. They've done bloody well, because. Yeah, but let's see when that comes out. So I kind of you've nailed it there. It's a bike built for the World Tour, tested at C grade speeds. It doesn't make sense. Why have they done that? Because they probably knew if they tested at actual race speed, it wouldn't have 100%. Been the same speed. And then so it's just spin. If they'd released this as an update to the Amonda, weight issue aside, you'd probably go fair enough. It's a more basically like a TCR, more aero version of the climbing bike. Problem is, it's not as light as the TCR, so I think potentially it would have stitched themselves up there anyway, but just to give them the benefit of the doubt. Other thing as well, they go like, well, this is just as fast as the Madone, so we don't need an aero bike anymore. That's such utter bullshit, because if you went to the engineers, the product designers, and said, here's 500 grams system weight, can you make this bike faster? You're telling me they couldn't do that? Like, I almost kind of find that embarrassing. And also embarrassing that the bike that you only released 2 years ago, the full aero bike, is apparently the same speed. Like, what a slap into the face of your engineers that just designed the bike you only recently released. That basically a glorified climbing bike is the same speed, if you believe what they say. So none of it makes any sense. I would like to see them, if it was, what would I like to have them to done? Release this as the new Amonda. Happy days. Maybe it's a bit heavy. Okay. We can kind of live with that. And then just do the Madone properly and improve it and get it down to that kind of 200 watt mark in Tour Magazine's, standard of testing, and have the extra model, and you would have been happy. But don't sell us this does both excellently when it doesn't really do either. And total fail. Total absolute fail. I just, the white paper was, an absolute work of fiction. So the bike that I actually have another note here. The bike that Dave Arthur weighed 7.34. On their website, they say it weighs 7 kilos. There's a pretty big difference. I don't know how they come up with, where's 340 grams difference between what he weighed it at and what they said it was. It's also a little, that's misleading. And that bike costs, $13,500 to weigh, 7.34 kilos, no pedals. Like that's
There's something.
Put 250 grams of pedals on it. That's 7.6.
The weird thing about this bike, and it goes against a lot of the marketing stuff that they were saying, and it goes against the stuff I was saying earlier on about products being designed way into the future. There's something about this bike and this launch that feels rushed. That feels like this almost wasn't part of the plan. That potentially Specialized forced them into doing a one bike to do it all. Maybe they've seen that SL8 cut into their market and they've rushed out a solution to try and compete with it, because it's just totally feels like design it and then create the narrative afterwards.
Yep.
We just need to get this thing out. Like 2-year turnaround. That's on a really iconic new design that was whoa, where did you come from? You didn't let that sit for 18 months, really, in the market.
Mm-hmm.
Put aside like stock issues, especially in Australia. Like we didn't see that bike for like 4 or 5 months after it was launched. And I know the local retailers were still struggling, many months after it was launched. And then to have turned around already and just ditched it. It just doesn't seem right. It feels like something rushed. Something's gone on here that's not part of the plan, and it shows. If you ask me, I honestly, and I know people think I'm a Trek hater. I'm not. I've said this. I like the brand. I like the bikes, but this is a proper dud. Like a proper dud.
It does, and I know you said like in the market, it's looking to compete with the SL8. It doesn't. It's not even close to the SL8. The weight's not close. The aerodynamics is not going to be close. And in the marketing, remember when the SL8 came out? And people probably think I'm just like dumping on it because it's a new bike. It's not true at all. When the SL8 was released, I actually gave them kudos because they were pretty realistic with all the figures that they gave out in their testing. Yep. It was real. Yep. It was just real well. They didn't look like much spin from what I saw. This is like the complete opposite. And I wish they were just like, they would never be honest because it is a bit of I think it is a bit of a dud. So it would be difficult to be honest, but they could just say like, guys, we maybe even say like, it's confusing for the consumers. So we're just going to condense it down to one bike. Don't say that the pro riders don't need it. And that's why we've done
it.
The issue. Just say it's easier for us to keep stock. And we think for a lot of riders, just having one bike to pick from that covers more ground is going to be a better riding experience for most riders. Can't argue with it. But this, that white paper just is, I just can't,
it's one of the best.
What they're putting out versus what they're doing is, shameful.
Try again. New bike, please.
What they'll probably do is like, I have a feeling, don't you reckon they'll release an Aero? They'll release an Aero bike.
No, I think they'll release a fully fledged endurance bike. It's my feeling.
Okay.
Either Demane gets a massive, massive reboot, like maybe it goes like Aero endurance-y or something. They just can't let that Demane drift because it's become the real like ugly duckling of the endurance range. Kind of given what it was, like given that Spartacus, like Cancellara, Roubaix, like frothy bike, given what that's become now, I reckon they've got to get behind that model quick smart. That's my thinking.
Okay.
That's what I'd do if I was Trek.
But I was watching a map, was it Map Deck video where he was talking about it? And they were saying like, well, but the Amonda's the best selling model. Like that's the one that people buy. Especially because it goes down the lower range of specs too. So I think they're still keeping the Amonda aluminium version. But yeah, I do find it frustrating that they.
But people say that, but they're not giving. We come across as like these sort of fanboys of Aero, but they're not giving the Aero bikes enough breath, enough time to sit in the market, and for the whole Aero thing to sit with everyone, and then that to kind of be believed and understood, and then you go and do something like this, which is then just whip away the Aero bike. Well, that's just going to undermine the honesty of what you'd been telling us for years. Do you know what I mean? So I feel like this sort of revolutionary, somewhat revolutionary stuff like that Madone was, takes time for people to understand. I just don't think they give the consumers enough credit when it comes to this, that we'll get around to it.
Yeah.
It just feels like a
Especially as
bailout
the
option.
bigger, I've said this before, but I'll just mention it again, especially as one of the biggest brands. Like, I still can't quite get my head around why they can't manage to have more range of options. Like, why do you have to go to a Dare to get a more specialist bike? You know, and you go to a big brand, they got they got 2 road bikes. Like, what? Anyway, that's my thoughts.
All right, Jesse. I reckon that's us done. I will see you next week in studio, and we'll have plenty of tour chat, obviously, to come back with. Hopefully, things kick off this week, and we'll go from there.
Sounds good. See you then.
All right, mate. Talk to you soon. We'll see everyone else real soon.